Tonight we're on with Uduak Oduok. She's out in California, and she's an attorney in the fashion entertainment industry as well as a journalist covering fashion entertainment. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you so much, Chris, for having me. I'm so excited and delighted to be here. Thank you.
We're glad to have you. All right, let's get things rolling. First, I'd love to speak to you about social media and how you implement different practices to benefit in your business.
Well, definitely. I think it makes sense to probably start with a context. I'm a context kind of girl, you know.
Sure,
how did I get into social media? I got into or forward into. Thank you, Chris, for having me, and it's definitely a delight to be here to express myself as an African born in the USA. I felt like often when I looked on TV, there was just weird images of who I really was. I wasn't, as a professional, reflected anywhere, and it frustrated me. And also being a part of the fashion industry where I started modeling when I was 15 years old, I'd go to fashion shows, get involved with fashion shows, and I just, again, was frustrated that beyond looking beautiful on the runway as a model, once you get off the runway and you go into regular life, it was just weird images of Africans, you know, starving, AIDS. It just frustrated me. So trying to figure out how to make, you know, change that voice and rebrand the continent of Africa, so to speak, I said, where are the opportunities? And at the time, blogging was a new thing. Google had the blogger thing going on, and you could just, in 5 minutes, go ahead and express yourself. So, you know, like have a blog within 5 minutes is that easy to do. I seen one blog that was emerging talking about fashion, and specifically Nigerian fashion, and I thought, that's cool. I want something like that, but I definitely want my own American side expressed as much as I do my African side. So I started what is now known as Lady Girl magazine. It's the first online destination bringing African fashion and entertainment to the Western masses, and we do that through the influencers. So I reached into my resources and my connections and contacts and used, you know, the interviews and coverage of some of the biggest names in America's fashion and entertainment industry to bring visibility and attention to Africa in a whole new way. So that's how I got involved, and it's just been amazing. It's been amazing. Yeah.
That's great. Wow. So you've covered all areas. That's impressive.
Yes. I mean, news stories everywhere. I know you were asking me how I've been able to sort of take that to implement into my businesses. So that's the magazine side. And there's the law side. The law side in terms of social media is still relatively new, but the results have been amazing. On the magazine side, I was able to implement so many different things to then become recognized as an expert in what I do, a very niche area, which no one was doing at the time I started, literally. And now there's so many people doing it. And that's a great thing. But being recognized as an expert on African fashion entertainment, and specifically trends and you know, globalization and where things are going, where things ought to be going, is really great. Also speaking opportunities, I did get a chance in 2008 to speak at the South by Southwest conference relating to that, attracting new clients, not necessarily on the magazine end, but definitely on the legal end. The legal end has allowed the opportunity for people who go on Google to search on terms. For example, you might search licensing, you might search copyright infringement, or whatever the case might be, or fashion law. And my articles do come up on the first page of Google for the most part, particularly on the law part and also on the African part. And so when that comes up, people are contacting the office and they're saying, we read your article and it was responsive to our search, or we called all kinds of different firms and they didn't quite answer our questions. And then we went online, did a search, and saw an article you wrote, and it was directly responsive, and we feel that you should be the one representing us. That's amazing. That speaks to the power of social media. And then, of course, like I said, speaking opportunities, and ultimately for me, writing a book. I've been writing in increments. I definitely intend to publish a book both within the African fashion context and definitely within the fashion law context at some point.
Wow. That's great. So you're certainly using all the different aspects for all the right reasons. I mean, you know, all different aspects of social media too, the book, the speaking opportunities. It's incredible
Definitely.
how you're using everything to its fullest potential. Now, I mean, obviously you're using everything to its fullest degree. Now, in terms of the different platforms of social media available, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, marketing campaign for each different platform, or do you diversify it depending on the platform itself?
Depending on the platform, and marketing campaigns are very unique and very interesting. First of all, I think that there's a need to understand, and I don't know, maybe we'll cover it later on, but there's a need to understand how the online world works. You don't just get a Facebook page. You don't just get a blog. You don't just get a Twitter page or whatever. Down to the name that you pick, your domain name, your URL, your branding, every single thing has a definitive purpose. But not only does it have a definitive purpose, you also have to really think about what people are searching for. You know, really use the tools available online to find out what people, where is the conversation going, what are people talking about. So I really tune into that in everything I do. I definitely use, for example, Facebook to do my press releases, you know, make sure that we all, on my team for Lady Bureau magazine, that we have our press releases out, because the return on investment and the little things we do on Facebook is amazing. Build a community. A lot of people think you have to have millions of people following you. I don't believe that. Lady Bureau magazine, for example, has, you know, millions, over a million page views, for example, within the last year alone. But in terms of Facebook page, we don't necessarily have that many fans, and that's quite all right, because we want fans that are very, like, people who are happy to be there, and not only happy to be there, but are responsive. I don't want 10,000, 1 million fans, but when we call them to action to do something, they're not doing something. The same holds for the law firm side. We don't necessarily have that many fans, but the fans we have are able to act when we ask them to act for things that matter. Where applicable. So definitely you have to think about that. Twitter has been quite interesting. On the law firm Twitter page, I've had clients contact. I've retained clients through Twitter. I think it's amazing, and I just love how short and sweet it is, and it's a good platform. So I think you really just need to figure out what are you online for, and what is the specific purpose of each platform. LinkedIn is for professionals. You go there to talk business, look for people to do business with, interact with platforms and what the different, you know, groups that are on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has over time evolved, and now it has some tools that you'd see on Facebook and Twitter. But ultimately, what are you going to LinkedIn for? When I go to Facebook, I'm looking to build a community. I'm looking to make the people that follow me feel very good about themselves. I'm looking to inspire them. I'm looking to have a conversation. On Twitter, I want to keep it short and sweet and straight to the point, but still maintain my personality of inspiring and giving a lot of information that empower people.
Sure, of course. Now, I really like what you touched upon in terms of saying so many people have the perception where you got to get 1 million fans and 2 million fans. But I like how you structure it so that you specifically target the right fans. That's the most important thing, is who the people are that are going to your page and interacting. It doesn't matter if you have 5,000, 50,000 people if nobody's interacting, but you're targeting the specific audience and reaching them, apparently.
Yes, and then you have to know how your audience behave also. It's so important in the Lady Bureau aspect, and definitely in the law aspect. You're giving information out. So people, the Lady Bureau magazine is for the Western audience. It's not for the African audience per se. That's not the primary target group. So the Western audience typically have no clue about the real Africa. What they have is the stereotypical Africa I mentioned when we first started out. So when they get on Lady Bureau magazine site, they are on information, you know, satisfy my curiosity. Ooh, I want to know what's going on. So they don't necessarily, for example, interact with our articles in terms of responding or commenting, but they will send a lot of emails, and they would send information or requests for interviews and all kinds of stuff that they're so curious about, or what designer do I shop, where do I go, oh, I've been following you for this and that. I mean, we get a lot of those kinds of emails. But then when you get on the site, you're not necessarily seeing like a site that is more like, let's talk about celebrities and fight all day kind of site, where it's so responsive, like Perez Hilton, or maybe other sites that are being, you know, more interactive in that sense. So you really also need to tune into your audience, and we're perfect. We're fine with that because we target audiences that are business owners or, you know, fashion media moguls and all kinds of people that are on the upper echelon of society, the influencers who don't have time to be doing that kind of conversation. but they want to be entertained and they want to be informed. So,
sure,
yeah.
Of course. All right, now to flip the bill a little bit, obviously being in the law profession, you understand the certain legal ramifications of how people interpret and use social media. How important do you feel it is for people to become educated on these, the laws and ethical rules?
Well, very, very important. Before, everyone could just get behind a computer and say whatever, and just like things people would not say face-to-face to you, they would go online and just talk anyhow. And over time, things have really changed, because I always say that when people start behaving badly, guess what? The law steps in, and lawyers and law enforcement people and police officers, prosecutors, judges, all that stuff comes into play when people start behaving badly, whether on the civil end or criminal end. So let's parse it out so we really understand what we're talking about, right? So if you're looking at, for example, bloggers, which is a big thing, bloggers have redefined the online community. They've redefined just journalistic, standards and journalism as a whole. But a lot of bloggers also get online and they talk a lot of crap, so to speak, a lot of rubbish, what amounts to defamation. In the legal context, defamation is saying something that's untruthful about someone. And if you say something that's untruthful about someone, you could be held liable. So the law has really, really changed, not necessarily changed, but embrace social media to say there are opportunities here to not only bring lawsuits against people who behave badly, but also defend people who are accused of behaving badly when they don't, which takes me into the area of free speech and how that coincides with, blogging, for example. And then there are other issues that one has to be aware of in terms of blogging, and that is, copyright infringement. You create content, well, that content belongs to you. Nobody else can use it unless they have your permission. So if you're a blogger and you create content, you don't want someone stealing your content. At the same time, you as a blogger should not be stealing content from other people. And if you do take content from other people, there are times where it's permissible under the law. So that's just one aspect. But as a whole company, a lot of companies independent of bloggers and now having, for example, social media pages, Facebook fan pages, Twitter fan pages, but they're not taking the time to have social media policies that spell out how their employees ought to be using the social media pages and when they should be using it. Employees should not be, at work hanging out on social media pages. It costs the companies money. If you don't have a social media policy to regulate, you start getting into problems. At the same time, what your employees busy chatting and hanging out or behaving badly online can cause liability to the company. So these are issues one has to be aware of, and as a general rule, companies should have a social media policy in place. Finally, I would touch on the legal profession. I do believe, as an avid user of the online social media platforms, that it becomes critical for lawyers to be informed and judges to be informed, and everyone in the legal profession. Gone are the days where you sort of shrug your shoulders and say, okay, yeah, whatever, it's for kids, whatever is happening online. Twitter, for example, there are now lawsuits about people, bloggers or social media influencers behaving badly in terms of defamation suits coming up that we're seeing on Twitter pages. We're seeing all kinds of interesting things, criminal activities alleged on Twitter or Facebook or other platforms, and it becomes important for lawyers to know how to not only use those platforms, but in addition be able to get what we call discovery. That's the investigative process that you have to take to determine whether you're defending a client or instituting a lawsuit on behalf of a client or whatever the case might be. It becomes critical for you to know and understand the legal ramifications of how you use social media. Finally, I'll add one point. As lawyers, when you are using social media, the rules don't change in terms of your obligation to your clients as a result of using social media. So assuming you were a client of mine, the State Bar of California regulates that I cannot take whatever we talk about privately here, assuming that you were my client, and spread that to the world. It doesn't change